If we were standing around the LGBTQ plus water cooler, this is what we might all be talking about this week. It's sponsored by Hot Topic. Hot Topic is an American retail chain with nearly 700 locations specializing in counterculture, related clothing and accessories, as well as licensed music. Hot Topic represents many varied interests of the LGBTQ plus community, including music, movies, graphic artists, gaming, and more. Hot Topic also features one of the largest collections of Pride merchandise that celebrates all aspects of the LGBTQ plus community. Hot Topic is a major supporter of diversity of our community and supports many events, festivals, and nonprofit LGBTQ organizations. Very notable is their support of the Trevor Project, the LGBTQ plus community's most important voice for LGBTQ plus young people. And that is why they are the sponsor of It's Happening Out's Hot Topic. Here we go. Gay Reddit was ablaze this week when a user asked if others felt like they wish they were not gay. Started a conversation that turned into a gigantic one. In fact, the user suggested the choice of taking a pill if it were available. Would you? There was an explosion of responses. It eerily reminded us of Pete Buttigieg's comments when breaking barriers running for president of the United States. Buttigieg did not describe being gay as something he had always believed was acceptable, nor did he dismiss lingering questions about his viability as a presidential candidate because he was gay. Instead, he described wrestling with his sexual orientation. One he said was able to win when he came home from serving Afghanistan, and that created his most new understanding. As a youngster in high school and in college, the situation was very different. He said, quote, "If you could have offered me a pill that could make me straight, I would have swallowed it before you could give me a swig of water."
When I was younger, I would have done anything to not be gay. If you had offered me a pill to make me straight, I would have swallowed it before you had time to give me a sip of water. It was a hard thing to think about now. It's hard to face the truth that there were times in my life when if you had shown me exactly what it was inside me that made me gay, I would have cut it out with a knife. And the reason it's so awful to think about isn't just the knowledge that so many young people struggling to come to terms with their sexuality or their gender identity do just that. They harm themselves, figuratively or literally. But the real reason that it's so hard to think about is if I had the chance to do that, I would never have found my way to chastity. Thank God there was no pill. Thank God there was no knife. People talk about things like marriage equality as a moral issue. And it is certainly a moral issue as far as I'm concerned. It's a moral issue because being married to Chasten has made me a better human being. Because it has made me more compassionate, more understanding, more self-aware, and more decent. My marriage to Chasten has made me a better man. And yes, Mr. Vice President, it has moved me closer to God. I can tell you that if me being gay was a choice, it was a choice that was made far, far above my pay grade. And that's the thing I wish the Mike Pences of the world would understand. That if you got a problem with who I am, your problem is not with me. Your quarrel, sir, is with my Creator.
Well, our hot topic of the week. If life as an LGBTQ plus were too hard, would you take a pill to not be gay?
I think it depends on the age that you ask us. Because for me, I would feel just like Pete. If it was between the ages of about 10 and 15, between when I knew and when I came out, I would have done anything to feel normal, to not feel like I literally thought I might be like an alien in the world. Anything to get rid of that pain. But then after coming out, absolutely not.
I just provide an observation to context of our conversation. He uses, and completely understandable, but he uses the word normal in that conversation. Therefore, he was not normal. Just point that out. Vernacular.
I mean, it's interesting, obviously I've been pretty gay my whole life. So some people, have that luxury of, Pete Buttigieg probably when he was younger, probably didn't come off as very gay. So he didn't even have those struggles. And
he could pass.
He could pass. And it's important because if you look at his struggle in a passing world, imagine the young people that can't even do that because, the slurs, the names, it starts very early in life. And even at that, I would still say no for myself because I've always thought of the things that made me unique, and that's one of the things that make me unique. It's always been tied together, right? And I always say that everything that's led up to my life to where it's at now, I'm thankful for. And I don't think that if that was such a thing, I would have or be the person that I am now. And I consider it a gift, ultimately. And
did you think that at 15?
I did think it at 15. I knew what happens. It's very interesting, right? When people talk about queer youth a lot, it's very triggering to me because when you are, I'll be very blunt with all of you. When you're called a faggot at like age 7, 8, and you don't even know what that is, you don't even know, you have no context of it at all. And it's not until later in life where you're even getting hormones or anything like that you're like, oh, this is okay. That's why all of these things are happening. When you have that happen, you have to make and you have to build up a certain shell. Very truthfully, my shell has always been comedy, right? That's what I've done my entire life. Make people laugh, entertain
create a
people.
defense.
Right, it's my defense, right? If you're not thinking about what I'm saying and the jokes I'm saying, well, then you're thinking about other things. And for me, I decided to just use what I had, which was making people laugh, as the reason. But if I could have, even then, I would have still not. Because to me, the problem with wanting to be, taking a pill to be gay and taking a pill to whatever, the problem is less about me and more about the outside world. And I've always been a person that is like, I can only do what I can do internally. I can't do anything about what the outside world perceives, and I'm not going to change my life based on the outside world. I've gotten it from everything, not just sexuality, race, everything, right? And I'm like, I can't change anything for all of you. Because
if I can compare and contrast to what you just said, you faced it your entire life and you found a defense through your humor, but it started very, very young in terms of that. I could pass. My entire life I could pass. And at 14, if I could have taken the pill, what you just heard Pete Buttigieg says is I would have said those exact words, but I could pass.
Yep.
And I would have chosen those exact words. Interesting to me, I moved down to Fort Lauderdale to do this show. And at 58, I was walking along the street in Fort Lauderdale. And the first time in my entire life, a pickup truck, I wrote about this in social media extensively, a pickup truck slowed down, 2 guys in it, rolled the window down, and called me a faggot from their truck. It was the first time I had ever heard that word assigned to me ever in my entire life. And it was a triggering, breathtaking experience. You faced it your entire life, and you wouldn't have taken the pill. I was passable and never experienced it in my entire life and would have taken the pill. Complete contrast opposites.
And I think for me growing up, it was all about the outside world. So coming from a first generation Muslim American, LGBTQ, and to Mark's point, it wasn't the fact that I didn't feel normal. I felt different from a young age, because from a very young age, I just knew that there was something different about me, and I didn't know what gay was. I had no gay influences. I had no idea what the word meant until I was older, and kids in school would just start talking about stuff and being made fun of and being called names, and you ask, like, what does this mean? And I had no idea. So at the time when I was a child, yeah, I would have absolutely taken the pill, because it doesn't matter, how much success you have or, how much achievements you have. For me, there's always a little bit of disappointment that comes with it because of the family pressure.
Oh, I don't want to be that
I
different.
have.
Of that I don't want to be different?
It's not
or
necessarily
that-
being different, but just the disappointment to my family.
Into their name and reputation.
So
in their community.
right, because it was all about everyone else. What is everyone
Do you-
else?
I'm
gonna
curious to that observation. You would take the pill because you would want family to be protected. Did that ever stop?
Think? What?
That feeling that I'm disappointing
The
family?
feeling, yeah, because the older that I get, and the older that like my parents get, also, there's a sense of guilt that I never got married and I never had children and I never gave them grandkids, and I see my brother got married and had kids, and my parents act one way towards them and different with me. Although we have a great relationship and I love my parents and they love me, but it's different. I never gave them grandchildren.
Is that feeling though yours, or did that feeling come from your parents?
I think it's a reflection of how I was treated, and knowing that answering those questions growing up, like, oh, when are you going to get married? When are you getting married? When are you getting married? And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to get married. So why do you keep asking? And then
And you resented that?
I do resent it because they would make those comments
Still
in very
today?
public forums. Not today.
Yeah.
They don't ask anymore because they know.
And you're talking about a comparison to your brother?
Yeah.
Just quick, and I ask you, in genuinely asking you, your brother, very likely, I don't know your brother, I don't know his story, there's no criticism or no observation on your brother at all, but very likely your situation in terms of success in life certainly rivals your brother or greater. I very much think that your brother is not being considered to be working in liaison with the White House.
Yeah, it's very
So-
different. Our achievements, he never went to college.
And
but
okay,
he
so
got married and had kids, which puts him at a higher level
doesn't matter.
than I will ever be.
it doesn't matter why.
I've done great things, and my brother gets all these like praises. I've done way bigger things than he's ever touched in his life, in his dreams, and I don't get the same praises as he does. I mean, he went to work in my mother's corporate company, as a tech, is now a manager, and they praise him like he did the right thing. Like,
Still to this day.
oh yeah, yeah.
Now, Jonathan, your mother, I think I told you this story. You're on the stage, you're performing at My Hollywood Pride. Your soon-to-be fiance is going to ask you, standing to the side of the stage, and I knew what was going to happen. Your mother very intentionally, out of the crowd behind me, made sure that people ask me to turn around to talk to her a minute and make sure that I knew her. I watched gigantic pride from your parents of that moment. That doesn't help wash all of that away.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the conversation with them, right? Like, I've sat them down and I'm like, why didn't you show up to my gala when I had the mayor there or the governor there, all these commissioners? And they were praising me, and I was rubbing elbows with some of the top people in Miami and Florida. And their response was, oh, it was a Wednesday. It starts at 8 o'clock at night. That's not a response, that's not enough for me to feel like you support me. And I was like, oh, if it was my niece's birthday at 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday, you would have been there.
So I can feel the emotion from you. We can all feel the emotion. It's beneficial to all of us. No, it's valuable because that's the issue of what the Reddit writer is saying. I would rather take the pill than go through this. And we're watching it at this moment. You would have taken the pill.
Oh yeah, 100%.
No question. But your parents love and respect you.
I do, and I think I fought for that. Like, I mean, they're the kind of people that are never gonna not love me, but I could see that there was kind of a difference between me and my brother. Even though my brother was a pain in their ass, I was kind of a non-problematic child, except that I was rebellious in the way that I knew what I wanted and I was gonna chase it, whether you liked it or not. But I was also masculine, and that was the way that that was my defense mechanism was, okay, I'm not that feminine, so what are you gonna be mad about? Like, I could still portray myself in a way that's not disrespectful or embarrassing.
Is there, not to get into therapy because we don't want to do this in the conversation, but the approach of you being very masculine, getting into weights, getting into muscle, how you reflect yourself as a muscle bear, could that all be a way to overcome your issue with your parents?
1,000%.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point they'd be over it, right? But I think, it's all right here, in the back of my brain.
The question for everybody that's listening to us then is if we would take the pill. I'm sorry, Mark, would you have taken the pill or not?
Yes.
No, I said that I definitely would.
You would.
When I was
That's
younger.
what I thought. So it's interesting that the feminine presenting at the table would have said no way, and everyone else says, "Oh, of course I would have."
And
right?
I think it's very interesting that we kind of pick different areas to overachieve in as well.
Exactly.
Fraternity president, Mr. Butch, academic overachiever, business and leadership.
Leadership, yes, it's very interesting because we see the commonality of it. At the end of the day, I watched your parents on arguably one of the 5 greatest days of your life.
Yes.
There's no question about
No
that.
question.
If I would have said in any way, not that I would have done that, but even if they would be interested in anything that I said about you, I've said a number of very flattering things about you to
Thank
your
you.
mother especially.
you.
She would have. My reaction is she would be shocked. At this moment, she would be shocked.
I think she would be too. And I mean, we've had the conversations before, but I don't think she gets like the damage. I don't think she understands the differential treatment that she's kind of, that the toll that it's played on my mind. And maybe she'll never get it. She's not me, right? She's not in our community. She doesn't know the suffering that we've gone through. And I'm okay with that. I still love her to death and I'll never hate her. And she doesn't hate me. She loves me and she loves my fiance and we're gonna make it. But my parents fucked
There's
me
such
up.
a beautiful open door here, though, and just kind of hearing that moment. I can just imagine you talking to your mom and saying, you know what, I was talking about this on the show, and I had no idea that you were that proud of me at that moment.
Yeah.
And just what that might,
I'm not doing that.
because you didn't know.
Why
I'm not doing that.
you, tomorrow, this segment will be cut out of the show, and you make sure that you sit down with your parents and say, I want you to watch this on YouTube. Or on Roku. Watch this on Roku.
Okay, shameless plug.
No, I'm serious.
I'm okay with having that conversation. I just feel like it's gonna break her heart. I think she'll
isn't
feel
that-
shame.
Isn't okay, but even if that's true, even if Mrs. Jonathan Casanos feels that, that's the place. How old are you? Remind me. How old?
I'm 30 something.
Okay, you're 30-something child. At 30-something, isn't it better to peel the Band-Aid off and it be painful for all of you and say, okay, now let's work through this? Because I don't want to work through this at 50. My father died and never hugged me a single time in my life. I know he loved me. I was wildly successful compared to my brother and sister in every metric standard that you can think of. Everything, 100%. There was nothing. Nothing. And my father never hugged me a single time. He never said, I love you, a single time in my life, and died. Wouldn't that be a reason to go, okay, it'll be painful.
Yeah.
Let's rip this off because we should do it now.
A
'Cause
lot.
something could happen to you.
100%. I think it's more work that I have to do for me than it is for her. I think she'll be shocked and say, what the hell, I love you.
There is where we get to. That's the primal
Because
vision of going.
it's more convenient to keep those walls up
That's
than to have
right.
our presuppositions.
If we're 14, we go, okay, yes, of course I don't want to go through that in the pill.
Yeah.
But it's not the question. We're now not talking about the 14 years.
Yeah.
We're not talking about him at 14 anymore. We're talking about us in our 30s, 40s, 50s. If my father was alive today, would I take the pill for my father? Oh, yes, absolutely, I would.
I always think about this, the expression, the hell is other people, right? I've always taken that to heart because so many of, and not just this, we're not just talking about sexuality, so many of the ills in life
Yeah.
have nothing to do with the individual. So many things.
Yeah.
You think about racism, sexism, misogyny, everything. It almost never has anything to do with you as a person. It's always the outside world, right? And now that we are in this stage where we're surrounded by the outside world all the time, you would hope and pray that people start to notice that it isn't just me, right? It's not me. But what's happening now is that people are now internalizing that too. And instead of recognizing that it is the forces of the outside that are making people feel terrible about their body or making people feel terrible about their job or any of those things, people are taking it on themselves and they're like, I should do better. I should be better. There was just on NPR today, this girl was talking about how she fell into bulimia and all of these things because she was an athlete. And she started following other athletic influencers and following what they were doing, which wasn't healthy. And she not doing and accomplishing what they did made her feel terrible about herself. And I think that that's a thing that it is not an easy journey, right? It's not easy, but it's a journey that a lot of people have got to eventually make. That if you are not 100% comfortable with yourself to the point that what the outside world thinks doesn't affect you, you're not ever going to be at that peaceful point in life.
Mame, in my opinion, that observation is so brilliant because there's no pill.
No,
We can't take a pill.
no pill.
So unless we can accomplish what you just said, when we say that we would take the pill, it's an indication of the damage we're still working through.
Yep.
And I think having these open and honest conversations, you know, with you guys and everyone watching is super helpful because, you know, maybe the next generation won't be as scared.
Yeah. Or so hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan, just last thought. I hope you will sit down with your mom and dad because one thing I do know about you, there's not a reason in the world that I would say this. You're handsome, you're kind, you're worthwhile, you're talented, you're generous, you're great in the LGBTQ community. You represent your family and everyone that's around you in a brilliant and beautiful way so well. There's nothing that they would not be proud of you if you give them the opportunity to say, even if it's, let's start with, I'm sorry in how I treated you, son. That's the place you want. And I know that so well because that's all I wanted from my father. That's it.
Well, I appreciate you
It's
guys.
a thought.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
Handsome?
Thank you. Shut up.
Make sure the check clears. Make sure the check
You were
clears.
really trying to drive that point home.
Exactly. You know, one other thought
didn't know
that's
you were
interesting
generous.
about this conversation is
Smart,
generous and
kind.
smart.
Here we go.
You're pretty.
Here we go. That's what I want. Just someone
Exactly. All
back.
right,
Someone
let's take
tell
all
me.
of that back. Let's take all of it back.
Come on, Viola. Come on,
Exactly.
Viola.
Viola. Where is Viola when we need
now.
her? I'm
He's got a
just
pretty
telling
mouth.
you. I'm going to be nominated for the Academy
I need a
Award
shot.
this year. All right. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.